And you actually made a Facebook post a couple of days ago talking about some of your reflections, and you listed some quite practical things actually to help people. And one of the things that I think is naturally going to happen right now is there's more potential for conflict right now, especially when it comes to family conflict. People are going to feel more on top of each other in their homes. And what are some of the most important things that you think are helpful for people, especially families, to help them to avoid getting into too much conflict when they're at home together?
I think there's a few things. First of all, just the simplest is just let's start by being tolerant and aware that it is going to be difficult. One of the things we sometimes do is let's say as a parent, we're struggling and the whole thing is struggling. We start getting agitated and angry that we're failures. Let's understand that it's going to be tough. There's going to be times, depending on the size of the family and its natural dynamics and the length this goes on for and various other things, this could be difficult for people. And just accept that it won't always be perfect. I think one or two tips that are potentially valuable. One is to always try and be a giver in all relationships. If we've got 5 or 6 people in the same house as us, or 10 people in the same house as us, or whatever the number is, can we give a little bit of thought to something nice we can do for each one of them on a given day, right? Just think a little bit about others. Giving produces a better attitude within us, and it obviously makes others around us happy too. I would say, second of all, remembering to give to ourselves. Then if I'm up to second or third, whatever number I'm up to, remembering to give to ourselves. If we're going to be in a stressful situation, taking a bit of time out once or twice a day, even for short periods of time, just to put ourselves in the right mind state will make us better givers for others. I think communication is absolutely key. And I'll give you an example. A standard situation, you might have one parent who's on an important call or meeting at 10:30 till 12:30. Maybe it's business, maybe it's a family member, another who expects to go out shopping at that particular moment, maybe for the family or maybe for somebody down the road who needs help. And you've got kids who expect to be in a class at that moment. It's a recipe for disaster. If people just literally sat the night before, went through the main highlights of the day and worked it around, then one of them could have moved the meeting or the shopping or something, so that we don't run into these sorts of problems. When do we expect to be eating and doing different things? Those simple communication can alleviate a lot of these things. And the final thing is there's actually big advantages of all being at home. There really, really are. I know it's funny, but if we start to flip our brains and think, one sec, can we turn this into a positive? It's not so difficult. Anyone who's kept a Shabbat meal knows the power of a phones off, sitting together. Can we do that every day of the week for supper or 3 times a week? Can we have... we also have the ability to work flexible hours if we're working. Can we plan those hours around the key times that we need to be with our kids and stuff? So those I think are some very, very important guidelines. But again, remembering not to get stressed if it doesn't work out too much. It's okay.
And what about if people feel they have family members who, you talked about communication, they feel like they're not great at communication or they don't listen to people's concerns or issues or whatever. Is it best is your view better to just keep it in, keep stum?
Well, look, you can sometimes try and say every situation is so different. Some situations need professionals to help with, but in a normal scenario, one person's less good at communicating. You can say, look, generally speaking, it's better not to sound like we're criticizing people, not you are bad at communication, this is hurting us, but to almost flip it around. I hope you don't mind. I'm really struggling because in this sort of environment, I need a little more communication. Do you mind if perhaps we just spend 20 minutes talking about what you're thinking about tomorrow or you're thinking right now? Those are always helpful ways of trying to interact. Generally speaking, I know it's easier said than done. What?
So you're not attacking them, basically.
Yeah. I would say generally speaking, much easier said than done. But when we're resentful and angry at people, we communicate less well with them as well. So wait for that little discussion for when we're in a better place.
Right, absolutely. And let's talk also about just broader relationships. What would be your top advice for right now? I mean, some people are actually having more time to spend, working on their relationships, developing relationships. They have more time to reach out to people. But even forgetting the whole situation we're in right now, what do you think are the most important things when it comes to developing good relationships in all kinds of ways, with parents, grandparents, friends, with your boss or your employees? What do you think are the sort of key underlying principles that apply to all different relationships?
All relationships depend on giving, on communication, and on being very aware of where we're coming from. Giving means not just giving gifts, but giving time.
Why aware of where we're coming from?
What's that?
Why do we need to be aware of where we're coming from?
Where we're coming from is like this, because in a relation, communication I've explained as well, and I think it really is important. But in terms of where we're coming from, is if we feel negative about somebody, we're feeling a resentment, let's say, an anger, something upsetting, there's typically a lot going on beneath that. In fact, there always is. It's not only what they've done to us that's usually at play. Again, unless there are exceptions in one particular group of people we have to really be thinking about are people who are in very unhealthy relationships who are now going to really struggle with being isolated, But in normal scenarios where there's just everyday frictions in relationships, behind resentments are usually not just what the other person did to me, but my whole world that interprets it. So, for example, I may have expected to be on a phone call with somebody and they didn't get on the other side of the call. I've now got angry with them. What's going on? I'm a little bit afraid that they may not like me. I've got pride and that's been hurt. I've got this, that, and the other. My brain starts conjuring up all sorts of scenarios. And sorry, just one sec. Okay, that's part of the beauties of doing interviews in the home. Things popping in that. So let me just stop and reflect and realize that my anger is actually being caused partly by my pride, partly by my fears, partly by things like that. And when I have that awareness, that helps me understand that it's not the fact that they didn't call me when I expected that's causing the anger. And then there's different things. Do I pray a little bit for that to be removed? Do I just become aware of it and let it drop? There's different approaches to dealing with all that. But being very aware, there'll be a lot of stuff, tensions, fears, anxieties going on inside me that might provoke reactions that are probably going on inside the other people too. That's also worth thinking about. They're screamed just now, but they're probably going through a tough time. Being aware of those sorts of things can be very, very helpful in relationships.
I've honestly found one of the hardest things that I've learned, or I'm learning, is that one of the hardest things to balance in a relationship is to know when you should stand up for yourself and know when to just take a step back and not create a fuss. How do you get that balance right?
Yeah, there's a third one, which is not necessarily the standing up for oneself and not necessarily walking away, but it is communicating the fact that something has hurt us. Again, I always think in relationships, when there's a two-way clash, that we've been hurt by somebody, not expressing it as the fault in them, because that's the best only part of the picture, but just expressing the reality that I'm in pain. I'm not saying you did anything wrong. I'm just saying that I am hurt as a result of that. Is it possible that we could talk about it?
But sometimes surely it is valuable to, even if you're hurt, to not say something. Maybe you.
There are times. I think as a general rule. Again, some of this is going to veer into areas that professionalism is beyond rabbinic qualification here. But I think one or two of the very important things is it a small incidental issue that's one-off, or is it part of a pattern? If it's a pattern, and can I cope with it or can't I? If it's sort of pattern which I'm not going to be able to long-term really work with and just drop all the time, it's building resentment within me, then it probably should be communicated. If it's literally the one-off thing that's not a big deal, or it's just because I'm in a bad mood that I'm even bothered by it, so let it go. It'll work on myself.
To stay up to date with JTV content, click subscribe here if you're on YouTube and hit the alarm bell. And if you're on Facebook, hit the like button, and under following, click see first. If you enjoy watching JTV content and want to help us continue to grow, please consider making a donation to us by clicking here.